I'll introduce my friend in just a moment, but let me kind of catch you up if you've been gone the last couple weeks, or if it's your first time to SYA, welcome. My name's Dusty. I'm up here a lot, and the last couple weeks, we've been in a series called Whole, and it's all about mental health. And something I said a couple weeks ago is that, according to statistics, your generation, there's been a spike in people your age seeking mental health help. And I see that as a good thing. It's not like your generation needs it more. It's that I think your generation is more willing to look at the realities that surround our mental health. And so you're more willing to seek help. So I applaud you and your generation for that. Tonight, we've looked at a couple different things. We've looked at despair. We looked last week, Jim Beebe came and talked about depression. And tonight we're going to look at the devastating issue of suicide. And so I have my friend Katie, who I've known for a long, long time.
Long time.
Yes, here to help us walk through that. But first of all, would you just welcome my friend Katie here tonight? Katie Williams-Robinette. I always want to say Williams because I knew her, but this is her husband Jeff, and she now has his last name, Robinette. Beautiful. Well, Katie, if you would you just take some time to introduce yourself to SYA, just other than you've been my friend for a long time.
Yeah, I used to come to this group. Do people still go to Starbucks after, or do you just hang out here? Does anyone hang out after this at ever?
2005.
Okay,
yeah.
You still hang out. Back when I would come, they'd be like, tonight we're going here, then we're going here, whatever.
Yes.
So I used to come here. I grew up at this church, probably third grade forward. How many of you kids grew up in the Valley? You grew up here? Okay.
Majority.
All right, a lot of people. Okay, yeah. Same. I grew up in Northridge, this is going to be easy.
Yes.
818. Okay. So, yeah, always 818. Don't you lose your cell phone number because you can't get it back. That's not what tonight's about. We're already off track. This is going very well. So, yeah, I grew up in the Valley. I'll give you a little bit of my background and kind of about this. Grew up, close to here and went to Shepherd about third grade forward. So this was, our home church. I'm one of 4 kids. I'm number 2. The rest are all boys, all brothers. Grew up here. This was my church. This was our church. And if anyone is already, maybe you're not, but if anyone's thinking like, oh my gosh, tonight's the night on suicide. This is going to be so depressing. Like, why did I come today? Like, no. I just want to be honest with my experience with you guys and maybe something you're going through and what my family went through, so you don't have to. It's just an honest conversation. Is that cool?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Okay, so the transition I have here is the topic of suicide is obviously more than a topic for you. It's more than like statistics and things. And so would you maybe just share a little bit of how this has touched you and your family?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was 16 when my 17-year-old brother took his life. As I said, 4 of us kids, so we were super, super tight. We were a year and a half apart and 1 year in grade in school. So he was a junior. I was a sophomore when he died. Went to Granada. So many locals. It's great. So, very much a part of this community. And I think my family growing up, we went to church every Sunday. That was very much a part of who we are. So I think people were like, wait, you're like a nice Christian family. If this can happen to you, this could happen to me. And after my brother died, and we'll kind of go into the story, but after he died, we actually did his funeral at Shepherd. And it's kind of crazy because when we were talking about getting ready to do this, Dusty goes, oh yeah, you won't recognize it anymore, but it's in the old building. I was like, oh my gosh, that's literally his funeral was in this exact room where we are all sitting tonight. And I didn't know that when so there was just one of those, God has a way of turning things in a way you cannot even imagine. I was not expecting to, so it's just a very full circle kind of a thing. That was close to 20 years ago. And, like I said, we were very, very, very close. And I'm going to share a lot more about our relationship and things, but the reason I'm here tonight is because there were very clear signs that he showed that we didn't know at the time. And looking back, he had all those warning signs. So if we only had known, if we only took him serious, he would say like, oh, I'll just kill myself, or we'd be like, you don't mean it. We never took him serious. Like, good looking kid, ton of friends, great car, like some materialism stuff too. Like, what do you have to be upset about? Like, you're fine, But the outside, it doesn't always reflect what's going on the inside, right? It doesn't always match. And so I think he was dealing with some things that, I think he lost hope. Like, people say, why do you think he did it? I always get that question, and it's kind of like he lost hope, and that's distilling it down to a very simple form. There's a lot of things that lead up to, depression and all of these things that can make someone think suicidally, and then do something like self-harm and then actually take their life. But he certainly had all the warning signs, so we'll talk about that. But I also think it's something to say, like, you can't say like, oh, that would never happen to me, or that, because that's what I said. Oh, you would never do that. You're just saying that, And I was a little sister. I just thought, oh, you're just being dramatic, or you're just mad because mom and dad, you got grounded again or something like that. But yeah, that it's not always as it seems. So that's kind of what I want to share with you guys.
Well, before maybe we go into some of that, what's a memory or two that's fun that you have of Gabe?
Yeah. Okay, so there's a really good one where we snuck the car out. So
You both did?
Together.
Yes.
I'm not recommending this.
It's before you were of age to drive.
Oh, for
Yes,
sure.
got it.
Yeah. So he had a permit at most, I'm pretty sure. I definitely didn't have it. And I was laying down to go to bed, and he's like, hey, mom and dad are asleep. Like, let's go take the car out. I'm like, no, I'm going to sleep. I'm like, leave me alone. And my friends always told us that Gabe was like Bart, and I was like Lisa in The Simpsons. Like, troublemaker, like breaking every rule, and I'm over here like, I want an A, like. So that was kind of our relationship. Like, he'd kind of push me a little bit, and he kind of would help me get out of my box a little bit and be probably a little more risky with things. So this was one of them, and he used to promise me like, oh, you're just a freshman right now, but like when you're a sophomore in college or high school, I'm gonna take you to a party. I'm like, that sounds questionable. Yeah. Okay, so the car. So he says, mom and dad are asleep. Like, let's take out the car. I'm like, no, I don't know. Like, and I don't want to get caught like that. I just don't want to get caught. And he's like, no, I know what to do. Yeah. So we like sneak in the garage, and he knows what to do without starting the engine, and he gets us, far enough away where I'm like, oh my gosh, we better push this car way further because they're gonna hear us. He goes, no, this is far enough, trust me. So we would get the car and whatever, we started. We actually cruise up here before they'd built a lot of these buildings up here in Porter Ranch, and we're just driving around. Like, I was like, okay, this is actually kind of fun, you know? And he's starting to get relaxed, he's doing he's such a dork now that I think about it. But he thought he was so cool, like the one wrist over the steering wheel is rolling down the window is like picking music. He's just like, we're cruising, it's dark, it's just like the nice cool air's coming in. I'm like, all right, I'll relax a little bit, put my window down, like this is okay. And we're driving around, and then we see a cop car like coming at us like this in the other lane. I'm like, oh shoot. He goes, sit up straight and look straight ahead. Yeah. I was like, okay, oh my gosh, we're both so short, this is not gonna go over well. And we're like sitting up tall, and then we like go further, and he's like, all right, that's enough, we're going home. Like, oh, you said I could drive. He's like, no, we're going home now. Yeah. So we turned around, put the car away, close the garage door quietly. We go to our room, and I think it's like all cool and fun and whatever. And I see him the next morning at breakfast, and I'm all smiling, and he's just like, whatever. So that was a little taste of our relationship.
Oh, I love it. And I think we'll see this picture later when we talk about this. That's good. So obviously you were close to siblings. He was the oldest,
right?
And you were second.
Yes.
And then I just lost the third.
Jake,
and then Zach. Zach, I knew. I might have a story about him later. But maybe share some, because I know that you've become very knowledgeable, and I'll talk about your book later too. But I know you've become very knowledgeable. Would you want to share maybe some statistics and information about suicide that maybe we might not be aware of or that would be helpful?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's hard to, I think it's easy to think, oh, it's like this distant thing over there that'll never happen over here. And show of hands, how many people in this room have been touched by suicide? Either someone you know or someone you love has lost someone. Yeah, there's hands everywhere. Yeah. So the unfortunate part about the reality of suicide in our country, I'll give you a quick rundown. Just a few statistics is it's the 10th leading cause of death in our country. It used to be 14th when I was first speaking about this years ago. It used to be the 14th cause, and I've updated since then. Unfortunately, it is now the 10th cause of death in our country. It's the second, you're probably looking at it, It's the second cause of death for people ages 10 to 24, which is extremely high. Isn't everyone in this room right? Just, under 30, like in not far out of this, range on the upper side. So it's basically around the nation, it's just becoming more prevalent. And so it's something that we need to keep talking about with mental health and seeking help and getting help when it's needed.
Yeah. The 10th cause of death.
In the U.S.
Period, yeah. Wow. Well, I think this next question is super important, and I think can be very helpful if we start to hear some of the things that, as you looked in retrospect with Gabe. But what are some of the red flags of suicidal thoughts, or even red flags of people saying some things?
Yeah. If someone says they're going to take their life, believe them.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing I always say. It's like if someone says, I don't belong here, or I'm just done, or it'd be better if I was never born, or no one would miss me if I'm gone, or I'll just kill myself. Don't take it lightly. Don't decide for them that they don't mean it. How do we know what they mean? How do we know what they really mean if they said it? So that's a cry for help. So there's a lot of warning signs. Some of it is just talk. It's just saying, I'm just done. They just feel hopeless, really. It's so it'll come out in words, and so you want to definitely take that seriously, and we'll talk later about what do you do to help somebody. But yeah, you need to look out for the things they're saying, if they're saying like they want to kill themselves.
So a big sign is often the words. That to the person it might be a leak. They might not necessarily be trying to warn you, but it's a subconscious
Right,
cry
they could
for
be
help.
just fed up and they just say like, oh, I don't have a reason to live, or no one would miss me if I'm gone, or something like that.
Yeah. Before that, when does someone need to begin taking those red flags serious?
Day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the minute they've thought it, said it, how long have they already been thinking it before they've used words to communicate it to you, right? And most likely you're probably a trusted friend, right? You're someone in their life. If they're going to tell you that, probably you already have a relationship there, right? Whether it's, a loose connection, acquaintance, or a friend, you're probably a friend at that point. Right. So it's definitely something that minute one you want to start taking serious.
Okay, so scenario that I think would be somewhat realistic, especially from a friend to another friend who ends up saying some of these things. So someone says something like that, like, I'm just fed up, I don't belong here, no one would miss me. But then when they're done, maybe they say, so if I was, I'm saying these things, and then I maybe catch myself and go, hey, I'm just venting, okay? But don't tell anybody, I'm not being serious, what do we do? What's the wisdom?
Yeah, so a lot of times I think people want to be a secret keeper, or they just want to say like, no, it's cool, like I won't tell anyone. And what you want to know is how serious they are. And if you're thinking that, and maybe they've said it more than once, and actually like in hindsight, it wasn't until after my brother's funeral, we found out like he told you, and he told you, and he told you. Like he had said this to a lot, I thought it was just to our family. It turns out he had said this repeatedly to his friends, like, I'll just kill myself. And they're like, come on, you don't mean that. You have us, you have your friends. They try to like negotiate with him, you know? So one of the things you can do, you guys know the Logic song? It was like, so it's essentially the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's an 800 number. You can call even if you're looking for advice for a friend. You don't only call that when it's like you feel you're at risk of self-harm. You can call and ask for advice. I always tell people call the hotline because it's 24 hours, free, anonymous, trained healthcare professionals that are going to advise you on the right track, because they can get, like right now I cannot individually get every single person's story and spit back an answer.
Right.
I mean, I will hear you. I'll be here after, and of course but it's like you can call them 24/7 and they can actually get into it with you and like do that surgery, so to speak, and like get the information you have to help you on those next steps. I mean, because now I have a lot of friends that will ask me sometimes about a friend of a friend, because, you know, I go telling people what I've learned, and so I've called the hotline several times just myself, like, hey, this is now, you know, a friend of a friend, here's what I know, this is what I'm advising, do you agree? Yes? Okay, great. So sometimes you just need a call, because you need to know how to help somebody. You know, it's not only for yourself. And actually, I had a friend, and we were doing an interview, and we went off air, and he said, oh, by the way, I'm going to tell you a crazy story. He said, look at my phone right here, right now. And he had the hotline in his phone. And this is a guy, like, successful like doing great. And he's like, I was in this low point. I just, you know, like my partner broke up with me. So I'm like out of this relationship. I got fired from my job. I had to move back in with my, you know, he was in this low point. And he said, I'm not even joking. I called that hotline in my lowest point, and I credit the guy on the other side of that phone who picked up.
Yeah.
So he said he saves it in his phone. He said, I'll be out at night. I don't care. I'll be out at a bar with friends. I'll be like, you better save this in your phone right now. It saved my life. It could save your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I have it saved in my phone. I text it out to people like, hey, you need to save this in your phone too. You might need to help somebody one day, or you get on the phone and you find out, you know, how can I help? So.
And do we have that slide, Mike? There it is. It's up there.
800.
Okay, so if you need to take a screenshot or a picture, you probably already did that, but so it's there.
Yeah, 800-273-8255. And there's a text line, also anonymous, also free, and you can, if you feel more comfortable, you can text back and forth as well.
And I know every case is different, like every scenario, but is some of the wisdom telling, like when someone makes some of these red flags start to come out, telling someone that they're very close to, like that has some power?
Yeah, so part of it is, okay, so this might surprise you, but let's say you call and you ask for advice. You may be surprised. Usually the first thing they tell you is you need to ask the person, do you have a plan?
Yeah.
And do you have a timeline? And you think, no, I'm not going to put that idea in their head. No, it's already in their head. You're finding out how serious they are. Because sometimes they'd be like, oh my gosh, no, I don't have a plan. No, I don't know when I would do it. Oh my gosh, no, I'm not that serious. Okay, well, that's good to know. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that level versus the next level of, yeah, I've thought about it, you know? When someone's desperate, they'll tell you a lot. You know, they're hurting. They're happy that someone cares and is listening. But I'm not saying you carry that burden alone, right? Like you seek help from a doctor, a mental health care professional, an adult you trust. There's a lot of them around here too. You know what I mean? Like you don't carry that alone and try to like fix them. I'm not advocating for that at all. But what I'm saying is if you're in that moment with somebody and they're opening up their heart to you, what you can do is just be there, listen, let them know you hear them, and then you can go into the next step about, have you thought about this a lot? You know, this is like, I'm giving you guys right now like the Q&A, like what happens if you're really in that moment of, you know, what do you say? Like, have you thought about how and when? Because again, it's not about you're planting a thought. It's like, if the thought's already there, you're finding out where they are on the spectrum.
And I just thought of one. So this is a little impromptu, okay? I remember years ago, someone telling me, I was a new youth pastor, so I was probably 22, and I'd had a student say something to me, and I was getting a guy in the church, older guy, went to him for advice, and he told, and I'm just curious if this is like collective wisdom or not, but he said, He said some of the things you said to find out, but then he also said, ask them to make you a promise. If they think to do this in a moment, to call you, but they have to promise you that they'll call, is that a thing, or is that just this guy?
Sometimes that's what the hotline will do. They'll
Okay.
say, okay, you need to call me tomorrow. Here's what you're gonna do. And it's a part of extending them one more day.
Yeah.
It's a part of like, hey, I got you, I'm with you. But at the same time, I would say don't do that alone.
Yeah.
You know?
There needs to be more than just.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
That's good. Okay. Oh yeah. So we've been in this series about mental health, and part of what I was thinking was that I have to imagine that Gabe's suicide not only turned your world inside out, your whole family, really, but can you talk a little bit about what it did for probably a long time, and in some ways maybe forever, to your own mental health, and some of how you dealt with that?
Yeah, I think I remember the first very honest prayer that I had. And, I went to school the day after my brother died. I was like, I don't want to sit around the house with all these people crying. Like, I'm going to school. I'm going to where my friends are, And I remember I would go to class. I mean, not like I could focus or anything, but I just wanted to be where my people were. And I remember, especially like my parents' friends and whatever, are you talking to anyone? They're all worried because I wasn't talking to anyone, but I was just talking to like my close circle. And that worked for, a little while. You're kind of numb for sure in the beginning, but I do remember reaching a point where I was sitting in my bedroom where I was like, okay, this now, because I would just like make it through the day and then get to my room at night, open a journal and just like cry and pray and journal because there's nothing else I could do. I felt like that's no one, at the time I thought who would really understand anyway, and I don't want to go there if I don't think they're going to understand, so I'm just going to journal. But I remember like just being in my bedroom and just feeling like this overwhelming, like, am I really never going to see my brother again? Like one of my closest friends, like I'm not going to see him again till heaven. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a joke. Like, I started thinking, then what's the point? Like, you just mad at God, mad at my family, you took away like one of the four of us kids. Like, God, you could have stopped that. Like, so why'd you let that happen then? Then why'd Gabe have to die? Like you could have intervened. You could have, there are people that saw him the day he died. Why didn't that person just like grab him? Why didn't, whatever. And, you go through all this, and I just remember thinking like, okay, this is too much. Like this, I can't handle this by myself. And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed and with my journal and just saying, okay, God, I need you. And it wasn't a long prayer. It was probably that much. And I just felt this presence, like almost like a cloud. Not that I could see, but I could feel it was like a buffer between me and the world. And it was this like peace and this instant calm. But there weren't any words. It wasn't like I saw an angel and then, God spoke no, it was just silent, but it's this insane peace. And I thought, okay, you're with me.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of a real relationship with God. Because, I came to Shepherd, I came to church, but I'd pray like when I want a good grade or I'm driving too fast, I don't want a ticket, like, the short list. Like, please help my friend with her job interview, whatever. Maybe a little more, but, it was very much like my parents have faith, therefore I have faith, but it wasn't like, God, I need you right now, and I need you to show up for me, And so I think through the loss of Gabe, he really drew me to himself. Yeah.
And those journals, that's what became the book, right? Journey of the Heart. And I think there's a slide that has the website to that. I remember it's probably been 10 years now when we did something like this similar with high school students. But I read that cover to cover. And do you share the story of God and the peace in that prayer in here? Maybe I just heard you say it at that interview.
I've probably told it a few times, yeah.
Yeah. But you were pretty much 16 when you wrote this, right?
16 when he passed, and then
journals.
17 when I started really writing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a good resource. And my next question is, other than reading this, what advice would you give to someone who has a family member or a friend um, who's done this, who's died by suicide. And so they're in your shoes, right? What is some of the advice? I know not everyone's the exact same in terms of how they process, but.
Yeah, it is so different for everyone. I even seen my family, how everyone did something so different. Like my mom joined a mother's group, like a support group, all moms who had all lost children by suicide. And then, I don't know, my dad got even tighter with his like Bible study guys, like his group. And a lot of people just surrounded us. I think everyone is so different. But depending on where you're at in your process, I think it's really important to find a way that if you need that one-on-one, therapy, that maybe that's the route. Maybe it's that in combination with some kind of because it's easy to say like, oh, I'm the only one that has gone through this or no one would understand. When I think it's really beautiful what happens when you take that broken thing and you pray and you give it to God, and you also realize he also gave us community and these awesome people, and you start opening up, and then you'd be surprised how much you have in common with another person. I find that happens time again in my life. It's been almost 20 years, and I still, usually around the time when, not always, but sometimes it'll be around the time of like his anniversary. Like I feel like God just kind of does something, like I'll meet somebody and they've lost someone to suicide. It's just like this kind of thing happens, and you just kind of, you get to connect with people. And I think for me that maybe, depends on where you're at. It took me over 10 years before I started going into an actual like support group, because I was a teen when I lost him. I was like, no one understands, like I'll just talk to my friends. And then years later, as an adult, I was like, okay, maybe I need to learn some things. I need to hear from other people too, and like, how did they do it? And that's how I started getting really active in volunteering. Is I attended groups, and then I started co-leading groups and taking the training and doing all that, because you start realizing like you can actually make a difference and help somebody else. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of that, like small groups, the support groups specifically for suicide, if that's, how you've lost the person, or, the one-on-one talk therapy, if that's what it's wherever you're at. If you need a mental health professional to maybe, diagnose, and maybe you need, medication to help you along the path, whatever you need. And that's why I say, let the professionals help along that path.
Yeah. What I've seen in you, and I knew you far after, pretty far after, is when I met you. But the verse I think of, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, I don't have it on the screen, but you can look it up. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, and I'm going to paraphrase. Sorry, Paul. But that when we are in time of need, God comforts us. And he uses that comfort so that we can give that same comfort to others. And I know you've done that a lot. Like I don't know that you've used this thing, but you've stepped into a way to help others through your pain and through the way God has comforted you. So I think that's I think that also the things you were saying about opening up, and getting, opening up yourself to whether it's community or professional, I think that works. I think that's good wisdom in any trauma, and this specifically. But my next question is, what would you say to someone here tonight? I mean, I know, and by the way, I haven't said it yet, I think you mentioned it, but Katie is going to stick around after our worship set later. So if you have something specific you want to ask about a friend, something personal, she's gonna stick around for a while afterwards. But to the group as a whole, what would you say to someone here tonight who has contemplated taking their own life? They've thought about this. Maybe some words from you for them on getting through that dark time and out of that dark place.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I speak from, I'm not a mental health care professional. I'm not a therapist. I just speak from my own experience and people that have shared now over the years, story after story. Like, you have to keep talking about this, because I'm one of those people. Like, I made it through that dark time. Like my friend I told you earlier, he lost his job, lost his relationship, like lost his housing, moved back home, like thought, this is it. Like, there's no point, after this. And he's like, I made it through that dark time. That's why, we have to have you on the show, and we have to keep talking about this, because I made it through that time. And so I think about that person a lot, because my brother I knew had struggles and was like fighting his inner demons or whatever you want to call it. But I don't know what he was going through. And if you're someone who is clinically, or you know someone who's clinically depressed or struggles with depression, anxiety, like personally, I don't know to that level of like what my brother was going through. But I believe, because after meeting so many people now that have been through that dark time, I do believe it's possible because they've told me it is, because they're on the other side, because they sought help, because they found an awesome therapist who they love. You know, they got medication if that's what they needed, prescribed by, of course, a doctor, a professional, and being plugged in, being in community, like not feeling like you have to suffer alone. I think our community or our world, we're more connected but more lonely, right? And that's kind of like Jim talked about last week.
Yeah.
So it's also like that coming together. So I believe it's possible because I've seen it, because people have come up and told me like, that was me. It's not me anymore, thank God, but that was me, so I get it.
Yeah, and I don't know how to, because what I want to say next is more of a prayer than it is maybe a direct thing. But I think I can say it as a direct thing, but know that in my heart it's also a prayer. But that if this is you right now, if you're in a place where these thoughts have lingered and maybe to the point of a plan, tell somebody. Say it. You know, my prayer is for courage, that you would let someone in, open up, and maybe you've thought, well, I've kind of already done that, I've implied it, or I've, joked about it, but no one's really taken it serious. Tell me. You can come tell me afterwards. Tell somebody. Reach out. And one of the things I wanted to say before Katie prays over us is there's a lot of, I've been asked many times, what's the eternal destiny of a person who dies by suicide, and I think that's a distraction, or at least that's not the goal here. What I hope you know, and are surrounded by all the time in this community, is whatever the topic or the conversation is that God is just, and that God is love, and that God knows the nuances and the details that we do not. But more than anything, the hope is that you and I would be a little more equipped from Katie's story and experience to be present and to be courageous for someone in our life who says some things to us, even if they then say, "Oh, I'm not serious. I'm just joking," or I'm just venting. That we would do something, and that if you're in that place, that you would trust someone. I'm going to ask you to pray over us. I'm going to ask you all to stand with me, and Katie. But Katie, if there's something you want to say before you pray, that's fine too, or just to pray over us as we move into a time of response.
Definitely. One brief story, and then I'll pray over us. After something similar to this, a good friend of mine had heard all the warning signs: giving away personal possessions, change in mood, saying things, retreating, withdrawing, not wanting to be around people anymore, increased use of drugs and alcohol, all kind of telltale warning signs, giving away these like prized possessions, like setting his affairs in order. And out of the blue, my friend gets this text, and it's like, "Hey man, thanks for being such a good friend," something like this. And my friend calls me, says, "I'm a little worried about my friend. We're supposed to have lunch next week, and he's texting me like, thanks for being a good friend." Like, that's weird. That kind of sounds like he's saying goodbye. And something in me like lit up, like, that's a warning sign that fits with everything else you said. And he just sprung into action. I told him, you need to call your friend's dad. You need to do all these things. They got to the kid in time, got him to the hospital, and they saved his life. So if you're feeling that gut instinct, if there's a face that comes to mind right now, if there's a friend that comes to mind right now, maybe that nudge is there for a reason, that's that person you check in on and just look out for them. Not to burden yourself, not to do it alone, but together. And my friend, because he took action and wasn't afraid to keep a secret or overlook it or say it's nothing. He saved a life. I mean, he literally saved this kid's life, his friend. So you never know. Just be alert and don't take it lightly.
You pray for us. Thank you.
Let's bow our heads. God, thank you for this night, for Dusty, for Shepherd, for this whole staff, for this amazing worship we got to hear earlier and be a part of. Thank you for everyone in this room. I know it's no accident. Every single person in this room is here for a reason. You brought them here tonight, whether they've been here 100 times or just a handful or it's their first time. There's a reason that they're here tonight. I pray for the one who needs courage to step forward, that they're the one, that you would give courage. For the friend who is hesitant to lean in to their friend's situation, that they would also have the courage to lean in. And for all of us, God, may we all be more open-hearted with each other. May we be better listeners with each other, more compassionate toward one another with whatever we're going through. And may we be more open hands and open heart, not only to each other, God, but to you, to what you have for us. And thank you, God, that you make all things new. Thank you, Jesus. It's in your powerful, precious name we pray.